Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday to all of our viewers and our listeners. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Michele Irby Johnson, and welcome to Life Matters with Michele. On this platform, we're going to discuss topics and issues that matter to you, that matter to me, and that matter to our community. Now, I would like to invite you, if you have any questions, to just feel free to just send them over and let us know what it is you want to say. And if you have a question, I can certainly send it over to our special guest. Again, this is season one, episode one, and we are so excited about this platform. Well, today our special guest is Dexter Peggins Jr. Hello, Dexter. How are you?
Michelle, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Well, everybody, I want to introduce you to our special guest. Dexter is the CEO of Kingdom Solutions Consulting and the founder of City of Refuge Enterprise, otherwise known as CORE. And he is quickly becoming a sought out leader in the area of life transformation. For close to 20 years, Dexter has helped countless people experience transformation in their lives, in their personal lives, their spiritual lives, and their professional lives. His mantra is live a life of purpose on purpose. I like that. That sounds like something I would say. He has an innate ability to inspire, motivate, and instruct. He serves as a mentor, an advisor, and a consultant to businesses and spiritual leaders. He's a husband, father, business owner, author, veteran leader, political influencer, and most importantly, an ambassador to God. And I only read a little bit of what he said, but it's amazing. I met Dexter back in 2010, 2011. We were both deployed to Southwest Asia over in the desert, and he was part of my spiritual team, and we just clicked. And I just remember him being such, an integral part of what God was doing in the desert. So we're going to jump right in today. Today's topic is combating the fatherless crisis. Combating the fatherless crisis. All right, Dexter. So tell us exactly, what does that mean? What does
Yeah,
that mean?
definitely. Yeah. So, first and foremost, Michelle, thank you for the honor of being here with you on your show today. As the very first guest, a lot of pressure, but it's nothing we can't handle.
You can do
Uh,
it.
yes, ma'am. But the combating the fatherlessness crisis is just that. It's really to wage a war. In essence, since we're both veterans, I think we can speak that language. Fighting against an issue that is in many times not properly handled, an issue that oftentimes is uh, swept under the rug, but an issue that really has very real consequences, very real impacts on those who are involved with the issue of fatherlessness, whether it be the actual child themselves, whether it be the father, the absentee father,
Mhm.
whether it even be the mother. And how does that reverberate throughout the generations of everybody who was touched by that particular event that caused that man to be absent in the life of his children?
Absolutely. And so when we look at this crisis, for some, they don't see it as a crisis, an absent father. They just don't see it like that. They just
Mm.
see it for what it is. They say it is what it is. In today's terms and society, you explain fatherlessness. So for some people, it doesn't bother them. And
Hmm.
the reality is, in our particular African American community, it's so prevalent, it's pervasive, and the issue surrounding fatherlessness has, like you said, been swept under the rug. And for many people, they're just so used to it that it doesn't affect them anymore. What do you have to say about that?
Well, there's several issues, several things I think that needs to be pulled out of what you just said. First and foremost, I want to present that there's been this narrative that Black men as a whole aren't there for their children, and we need to go ahead and put an end to that narrative, because that's not true. Um, Also, the something that adds to another level to that variable is we have to look at societal issues and societal protocols that have been in place that actually uh, promote the absence of men from their families. And so I think a lot of times we don't understand the nuances that are connected with the man being absent. But with the first issue that you stated, as far as the absentee man in the household, what it really boils down to is that uh, it, you hit the nail on the head. You know, there's an idea that says I don't need a man. And so because I don't need a man, that means, you know, he has no value. But the reality is that the value that you are speaking to, just because it's not necessarily tangible, meaning that you can't hold it, doesn't mean that it's not significant. One of the things about a father, you know, we both being preachers and stuff like that, I can share this. The term father from a biblical standpoint, from the Hebrew, is meaning is actually it means the originator. And the issue is that you have a lot of children looking for the originator, and the originator is not present. Meaning that I have a question concerning who I am, which is an identity question, but I don't have the source being able to speak to my origins. And that is one of the most pervasive issues as it relates to the fatherlessness crisis. You have a lot of people who are dealing with an identity issue. And so while on the surface, you know, the mother who's had to step up to the plate, while she may have been able to provide the means as far as the house, you know, the material needs, and was able to love on that child, there's still an identity thing that is not seen, that's not on the surface. And what you have is you have people going through life struggling with the identity concept. And because you don't see it, we often think, well, it's not there. But the reality is very much there. And what happens is it plays out in generations, in generations. Relationships and relationships is all connected to the fact that I don't understand who I am. And the person who was supposed to bring a context to my being hasn't been around.
Absolutely. You said a lot. So I'm going to try to extrapolate a little bit. So when we've been fighting the battle of the absent father for a long time. And like you said, it's not that the father is not there, but the perception is that fathers just don't step up to the plate. Fathers just don't, they're not on the scene, if you will. In the way that we saw it decades ago, when you watch the show Father Knows Best, and he comes in and Judy gives him a hug and the boys come running down. That's not always the reality in our community. And so one of the things I want to ask you, why is it seemingly acceptable to be okay with single mothers, raising sons in our community or in our society? It seems as if, again, like you said, some women are like, I don't need a man, but you may not need the man, but that child needs a father.
Definitely. I think what ends up happening in that conversation is that when we say that the man has to be present, that's I think people misinterpret that to mean that the woman is not strong or capable. Those are two different conversations. You can be a strong woman who acknowledges the need for a man in that child's life. That the mother, the father, they bring a balance to that child's understanding of who they are in the world. And in many cases, I feel as though oftentimes women they interpret that as a knock on their being and their capability, when that's not the case.
Right.
The reality is we're looking at what is best for the child. because the child will, at some point in time, if that father is not present, will have questions. And oftentimes the question involves self-worth. Was I not worthy because this person chose not to be a part of my life? I didn't ask to be here. And the person who helped to bring me into the world hasn't been an active contributor into my upbringing. And like I said, that lends itself to the conversation of identity and self-worth. And so it's not a knock on the woman. Listen, women have been shouldering a burden in many cases that they should not have had to shoulder. And so in us acknowledging the need for the man, it's not saying that the woman is not strong. It's saying that you're taking on something that you weren't supposed to take on. Let us come and let us be in our rightful position, and let us parents, whether it's as a married couple or whether it's co-parenting, but let us do it together.
Absolutely. And for myself, I was a single mother even when I was married. And I was raising my son, and I felt like there were things I could not give him because I was not a man. There are things I had to teach him that a man should have been teaching him.
Yeah.
We have a question from our listening audience. She says, I had to be a strong mother because the father wasn't there. Why is it that fathers just won't step up?
Well, that's a great question. Now, I try not to paint this with a broad brush because the issue is as nuanced and as diverse as the individual themselves.
Right.
A lot of times, especially if the man has not had the example of a father, it's going to be difficult for him to be something that he doesn't know how to be.
He's never seen it.
Exactly. And so ultimately the pressure of that responsibility, he crumbles under the pressure of that responsibility. And oftentimes he leaves that responsibility on the shoulders of the woman. And so, and that's the significance of what we're talking about today, is acknowledging that, man, listen, I understand that you might not have had that example, but we need you to step up to the plate and learn to become what is necessary in this moment, and that's to be a father.
Absolutely. I heard a pastor, a former pastor friend of mine say this. He said, a father is someone who is fully able to handle every responsibility. Now, you made a statement about them, fleeing, or because they don't know how to do it. They've never seen it. How do they then learn to be a father without that role model? I mean, I know there are mentors, but if they don't know what to look for, even in a mentor, doesn't that still create that void of ability and responsibility and accountability? What would you say about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's gonna require a twofold approach.
That's fine.
One in the man acknowledging his shortcomings, and as a man, I can tell you that sometimes is very difficult to acknowledge. That I am deficient in a particular area. But I have to be able to acknowledge the fact that I don't have a full understanding of what this responsibility requires. And if I don't have that example, I can start to look to other examples, whether it be directly or indirectly. There is somebody who is modeling what I want to demonstrate in my own household. The second approach is that I believe we as mature men, us as fathers, us as husbands, we have to be willing to go outside of the scope of our own household and be that model where we actively touch those men who are struggling in those areas of being fathers. And at the end of the day, if we know young women who have been shouldering the burden of single parenting, let's start having the conversation is, where is this child's father at? And, is somebody, engaged in their life? And if nobody's stepping up to the plate, then are we capable of taking on that responsibility and saying, I will become the example in this man's life. And I feel like a lot of times what the misgiving and where we fall short is we don't want to overextend ourselves. But the reality is that uh, our world is continuing to suffer the consequences of us not making the sacrifice, and that's what this really boils down to. It can't be just I'm content with my own household being okay. I need to go outside of my own household and begin to really impact my community.
Absolutely. And for some, they think it's selfish not to, go outside of their household, go outside of themselves, go outside of their experiences, and to become that role model, to become the one that breaks the mold for those who are living in the environment of fatherlessness. There's a I wrote this down. It says we've been fighting a battle of the absent father for decades, and oftentimes blinded to the effects of the situation because we're just used to it. Talk about how the crisis looks and manifests in our sons as well as in our daughters, and how it affects how they show up in society. So when you have a son, more poignantly, because men need men, but how does it also shows up in the female by the way that they treat themselves, how they appreciate themselves, how they show themselves to the men in the world. How does this affect males and females with regard to how they manifest or how they show up in life or not?
Oh, definitely.
I know that was a lot, but
It was, but no, it's okay because it's necessary. Well, first and foremost, I'm the father of two sons, and uh, so I don't have any daughters. But what I will say is, I have a number of women in my life that I care about. Some who have available fathers, and some who don't. I believe that what we see as the outward manifestation of the father, the absentee father, is people looking for that image in someone else. And so whether it be that young lady wanting the affection of a man because she didn't get it from her husband, and excuse me, from her father, now she's making a number of bad relationship decisions.
absolutely.
Where she's chasing men because she didn't feel valued from her father. Because in essence, like I said, the father, the originator, he's supposed to bring that context in relationships with his children. He's supposed to speak to identity and value. Even as the man, the young man who doesn't have a father, he begins to look for an image of what means to be a man, and that image might come from somebody who is not, operating in the right character. And so they begin to make bad decisions because they have now idolized a male figure, but he is not he's not a father. He can't speak to the issues that young man is experiencing. So that man, now he's going out in the world making bad decisions because no one was able to guide him and help to shape his decision making process. One of the things that I've been doing for several years now is I serve as a volunteer mentor in the prison system. And I can't tell you how many men that I've encountered who said, you know what, if I had a father, I believe the trajectory of my life would have been a lot different than it is now. It was because I didn't have someone to speak to me, to guide me, that I made a lot of bad decisions. And consequently, those decisions led me to being incarcerated.
Absolutely. This is some good stuff. We have a question from our listening audience that says, how do you show up as a father when your children reject your many attempts to father them? How do you do that?
Wow. Oh, that's good. I, if it's okay, Michelle, I might have to get a little pastoral. But
That's okay. I mean, be you. I know who you are. It's okay.
yes, ma'am. First and foremost, the word says, train up a child in the way that they should go, that when they get old, they won't depart from it. Never devalue your accessibility, making yourself accessible. We all at some various stage in life, we figured that we knew everything. When I was a young teenager, there wasn't really much you could tell me because I knew it all. But the
Didn't we all?
reality, the reality is that when you're not willing to listen to good advice, the world will become your teacher, and the world has a very interesting way of helping you to conform to the realities. And so I would say to that father, continue to make yourself available, continue to be present, because there will come a time when that child will come back seeking your advice, seeking your counsel, saying that, you know what, I didn't know it all. I thought I knew it all, but the reality is I need you. I need what you have to offer. One of the things with my own father, my father was not an emotional man. He's growing up. He was pretty. He's a disciplinarian to the 10th degree. But one of the things I learned with my father in becoming a father was he was doing the best he knew how to do at the time. He was operating with the information that he had. And so now I'm able to go back and have these conversations with my father because I am experiencing the same situations that he was experiencing. And it's because life has turned in such a way that now I'm seeing myself through the lens of my dad, that now I need him even more. And so to that particular father, just like I said, be present and know that in time, your child will come back to you because life has required them to need your guidance more than ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of our listening audience says there is a lot of traumatic events in the family that needs to be addressed, and that is so true. Some of them, particularly being a female, some of the things that we deal with as women is because some of the trauma has not been rectified or addressed or dealt with, and we carry that, and people see it as baggage, but it's something that we did not unpack. We didn't know how to unpack it. We didn't have a father to help us to address the things that we needed to address, because in essence, your father is the first man that you date, if I can put it in those terms. He's the one that shows you who you're supposed to look for, who you're supposed to eventually love. He's the one that shows you that you're worth having doors open. You're worth having put your coat on. You're worth having someone foot the bill. Now, I'm an independent, woman. I don't mind paying. I don't mind going Dutch or what have you. But there are a lot of those instances that us as girls missed, and it's reflected in how we operate as women. And so that was just one of the things that the young lady stated here. And so they're talking about fear, rejection, independence, and how do you speak to the woman who still has that little girl inside of her? And I know you don't have daughters, but just as a father, how do you speak to the woman who is still operating from the bruise of a little girl that was put there from her father? Now, you can go spiritual or not, but
I'm gonna have to.
there's a bruise in her spirit that was left from an absentee father, whether he was in the house and absent or out of the house and absent. There is a bruise that she's operating from as a little girl. She can be 50, 60, 40, 20, but she's operating from a bruise left by her father.
Definitely. Wow. Well, first thing first, let me start at the end, and then I'll work my way back.
Yes,
The first thing first is God, Abba is the first father. And so whether we have the opportunity to reconcile with our natural fathers or not, we have to get to a place where we understand what the first father has to say about us. And in doing that, I believe that's where the real healing takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it relates to our natural fathers, I'll say this: Malachi, I believe, says to the effect that God was going to return the hearts of the fathers to the children, and
Children.
the hearts of the children back to the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing after that particular verse, it says, is that there was a curse associated with this separation of relationship. And
Absolutely.
so what ends up happening is that when there's that father missing dynamic, there's a curse. So a lot of the traumas that we're talking about, those are curses. And so
Wow.
what we see is we see traumatic events spilling out into the earth because the first offense took place in the home.
Mm.
And so we have to get to the place where the fathers and the children, we begin to reconcile that relationship, acknowledge the hurt, and say, hey, look, this is how I felt, and and I believe that as the father considers his role in the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
that the hope is that he will begin to take ownership and then speak to the offense, and then the healing will take place. To that 5-year-old girl, even though she's 50, she's operating from the hurt that took place at 5. He, wherever he's at in life now, he can speak to where he was when the offense took place.
Yeah.
And the prayer is that the healing will now um, you know, take place in such a way that she will now speed up to her natural age in the area of her emotions.
Mm. Now, we have some people, whether they're listening, watching, or what have you, who may not be Christians, who may
Yeah.
not have that relationship with the Lord, who may not understand Abba being the original father.
Mhm.
Um, how do we give them the wraparound service that they need in terms of getting them to understand, first of all, who a father, what a father is and who he
Mhm.
is, but also who they are, um, and who they can become, rather, regardless. Because I know of a lot of women who have become uh, great, for lack of better terms. They have really utilized that absence to thrust them forward. They've used the fact that they were bruised to more or less prove to themselves and prove to
Yeah.
their father, even if he's passed on, they are still trying to prove to their father that I did this, I can do this, you didn't show me, but this is where I am. And the same with the young men. We still have men 50, 40, 30, 60, trying to prove to their father
Mhm.
that they are a man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see that quite often. I'll say first and foremost, I believe you actually already answered the question. Um, that is, you have to come to the place where you understand that your inherent worth is not dependent upon anybody. Uh, your being here proves that the world needs you regardless.
Mm.
And so you have to step into the understanding of whether I get affirmed from 1,000 people or nobody, I in of myself am worthy. And then what is my contribution to the world? We all have something that we are to offer to the world. And so for the person who doesn't necessarily have a Christian faith background, I would say believe in yourself. Find something that you're able to affirm within yourself, see your own good,
Mhm.
and live into that. And then at the end of the day, as you have achieved your success, understand that while it took something negative to get you in motion, that is not what is going to sustain you.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
good that you found should be able to sustain you. So whether it's my dad wasn't there, that might have been the momentum driver, but you have been accomplishing all of these great things since. And so guess what? You've accomplished them because of your ability, not because of this person's absence in your life.
That's good. That's rich. And I think our listening audience needed to hear that, because there are those who may be listening or watching who may feel that in order for them to feel like they've achieved, they have to prove something to a person who's no longer here. whether they've disengaged from your life or they've disengaged from the world because they're gone on. And we have to remember to remind our children, no matter how old they are, they were deposited in this earth for a reason. They're not a mistake. They were not, because somebody forgot to use protection or somebody was caught in the moment. They were deposited on purpose into the realm of this earth. Somebody said this is healing for some daddy wounds. Lord, help us not to be fraudulent fathers.
My God. Man.
Fraudulent fathers. What is that? What does that say to you? What does that say to you?
Oh man, that's yeah. At the end of the day, let's not fake in our responsibility. Let's not pretend to rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
Your being as a father is just that in of itself is such a value. That's such a treasure just to be. We grow into what it means to become a father. I'm a better father now than I was when my oldest son was first born.
Yeah.
And I trust that I will continue to be a better father as we progress in our relationship. I think a lot of times because we have conceived the child, we act like we got it all together, and that's not the case. I have no issue apologizing to my sons now for stuff I did 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
Because 3 or 4 years ago I didn't know, but now I know, and I trust that as we grow together as a father and sons, we progressively become better.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great takeaway, that whether you're a father, a mother, a parent, or whatever, each day is a growth process. Each year is a growth process, and you should be able to look back and see how far you've come. And again, be able to inject those apologies, inject those, you know what, I didn't get it right the first time. I didn't get it right the fifth time. I didn't get it right the seventh time. But at the same time, I'm present to make things right. And I think that is very important. One of our guests is saying, how do you feel with grief and regret when a child has lost a father and never had an opportunity to make things right?
Wow. I don't know. It was getting deep over here today.
Welcome to the show, sir.
I think grief, I think resentment, I think those are natural emotions, and we have to take ownership of them. And I believe that what we can do is, in those moments, acknowledge that if I had the opportunity to have this conversation with my father, this is what I would say. And I'm not going to allow the regret of not having this conversation to stay with me forever. Or at best, we can also choose to redirect the regret, allow it to serve as an opportunity that going forward, if we see a similar situation in a different relationship, we can address it right then and there. And so the reality is, I think a lot of us are carrying regrets from relationships that we don't have the ability to redeem. But at the end of the day, let's grow from those things. The regret is not meant for you to stay stagnant. It's always meant for us to grow.
Yeah.
For us to become better in each and every situation.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, that we can't get stuck in our pain. I'm a natural counselor. This is what I do. And, to remind people that healing is a forward movement. You cannot you can't stay in the past and expect healing to go forward. So it's necessary, and it's incumbent upon us to recognize, unpack, deal with it, and then moment by moment, day by day, experience by experience, we're able to feel those wounds start to close up. I mean, to the extent that, you may remember it, but it won't hurt, it won't bleed, it won't put a damper on the balance of your life. You know what I mean? It's,
Mm.
it's amazing. Oh my God, this one right here. It says, are fathers just sperm donors, or are they dedicated daddies to some children? Oh my God.
Uh, well, first and foremost, a dad is a sperm donor.
Right.
A father is a presence. Is somebody who's present, somebody who's available, somebody who is open to the responsibilities that he has created in this world, meaning his children. And so no, I because I'm a father, because I have a father, and I have a number of men in my life who are fathers. I will honor them and respect the titles and positions that they hold because they're good men who have acknowledged their responsibilities.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that there are a lot of men who skirt their responsibilities. Let's be 100% honest. I'm not here saying that every man who's had a child has done it correctly, because I know men in the very city that I live whose children live around the corner and they probably only seen them once in the last 5 years. And so we don't have this time that we live in doesn't afford us the opportunity to passively call something that it's not. If you are a man and you have neglected your responsibility, willingly neglected your responsibility, that I don't think you have the right to call yourself a father.
All
You
right.
were a sperm donor.
Mm.
But if you're a man who desires to be there for your father, for your children, and let's say there's other dynamics at play that are preventing that, then there's grace available for you. I understand that life does some strange things, and let's work on making you an active voice in your children's life. But no, a father is a present force, a present sustainer in the life of his children.
Absolutely. One of our listeners said he's a planter and not a donor.
Mm.
Oh God, I'll tell you. And I love the fact that you gave the distinction between a dad and a father, because a
Mhm.
lot of people use them interchangeably. And like yourself, I know that there's a difference between someone who helped to produce you, as
Mhm.
opposed to someone who helped to grow you, who helped to
Yeah.
shape you, who helped to let you see the worth and the wealth of who you are. So I love that you said that. One more question from our audience that says, can you speak to reconciliation and restoration? Because you and I both know there are times when parents are split, or fathers are split from their children for whatever reason, whether it's because they didn't pay child support and the child has been told, your daddy's no good, you just like your daddy. And so that's caused a chasm, or, whatever the case may be. How do you address reconciliation and restoration when the children are now growing up and the father wants to be an
Mhm.
active participant, but there's been such damage done, but now there's a season where reconciliation and restoration is desired?
Yeah, I'm glad that question came up. I actually think that speaks to what one of the other viewers said earlier, and that is being present with the child not wanting to be there, or be open to it. At the end of the day, um, once again, make yourself available. Fight for your children because they're worth fighting for. Fight for that relationship because it's worth fighting for. At the end of the day, when that reconciliation or when those initial meetings take place, expect that you're going to have to deal with a lot of the what if questions, the why questions, and own your part in that answer. If you weren't man enough to handle your responsibilities, then own that. Let's not make a whole bunch of excuses why, but because now this is a prime opportunity for you to become available in their lives.
Mm,
Secondly, I will also offer this, that you don't want to vilify the other parents,
absolutely.
because at the end of the day, that's still their parent as well. And so it's owning my part in this matter, but then also making myself available. Then how do we grow and go from here? And I feel like a lot of times what happens is that we want to vilify the other person, when the reality is that, you know, we're continuing to waste more time. We're losing out on the time. You know, we're adding on to the time that we've already lost in that relationship. So if we're coming together now, how can we grow from this place?
Absolutely. And what that vilification does, or that vilifying of the other person, it perpetuates, the cycle. And so
Yeah.
you have children growing up angry, growing up bitter, and that manifests in behavioral issues. It manifests in not being able to keep a job, going to prison, or being mad at life. And so it is very important that whoever the custodial parent is does not, taint the mind, the heart, and the spirit of the absent
Yeah.
parent, whether they choose to be absent or not. We can't do that. We cannot redirect our anger to the absent person and put it on the child. We can't deflect. We can't do that. Um, Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Dexter Peggins, and we are talking about combating the fatherlessness crisis right here on Life Matters with Michele. I wanted to talk a little bit about your book before we end the show. You wrote a book, one of your books, because you have many books, called Dear Son, the Words of a Father to the Heart of a Son. And so can you give us a little background on this? I know it's a compilation of some letters, but just from your perspective as the author, tell our listening audience about this book.
Well, first of all, I had to reach and grab it, but it's this book right here, and we actually a number of the themes that we actually talked about today. I discussed in this book.
Good.
The inspiration behind it is, the reality is, a lot of the issues that we see in this world, I believe we can trace back to the home. And what we find in those homes is we find the the lack of that father son, father child interaction. And I open up this book in a very unique way, where it's the voice of different fathers.
Wow.
Because let's be honest, not everybody had a bad father, you know.
It's true.
So, you know, I open up in the voice of a good father, the immature father. The immature father is the one who, listen, you may have had a child very early in life and didn't know what it meant to be a father, you know, and so they're learning as the child is growing. So together and making a lot of mistakes. Some of us had abusive fathers, some of us had absent fathers,
Mhm.
and some of us also had the fathers who were, you know, in the book I call them the wandering father, which is who had families but they weren't involved in your life. You know, they had other children,
Yeah.
and what you have is the voice of a father who may sound like your own father. The reason why I wrote this book is because I felt like it was necessary to really start talking about these issues. Like I said, in volunteering in the prison system and doing the stuff I do in the community, there are a lot of people in this world who are struggling with the conversation of image and identity, and it really revolves around the fact that they did not have someone to point them in the direction that they were supposed to go. They
Right.
didn't, as a man, you know, my first example of being a man should be my father. And if I don't have that example, now I'm searching for something that may or may not be right. You know, no one is bringing context to the emotions that I'm feeling as a man. You know, I don't want to necessarily, you know, this is no knock on women, but, you know, and as you stated earlier, as a young male, there were things I was dealing with that I didn't feel comfortable talking to my mother about. And that
Absolutely.
was the reality, because I didn't feel like she could relate. And so what you have is you have a lot of men who were forced to figure things out on their own, right or wrong, and now they're going through life, you know, passing down these bad experiences to their children,
Mhm.
or vice versa. Their absence is now becoming the information that informs their children that it's okay to run from your responsibilities.
Wow.
And so in this book, it's my hope that there is a healing that will take place in those who have gone through life without a father, and that reconciliation can take place so that we can begin to heal in our families and in our communities.
Wow. This has been wonderful. This has been a moment.
Hey.
And I'm so glad that you were the first guest, because this is something that we really need to address individually within our homes, as well as, you know, in the church or wherever it needs to be addressed. And I like something that you said, and it put me in the mind of people practicing fatherhood.
Mm.
You know, they're practicing how to be fathers because they've not had someone in front of them to model it. So they're practicing it. And as a result, they're, you know, missing the mark from time to time. Then they pick up the pieces from time to time, and eventually they get it right. And so this has been a wonderful start to hopefully a long run. And I'm so grateful that you joined us. Those of you who all would like to connect with Dexter, you can certainly visit his website at www.dexterpegginsjr.com. That's Dexter Peggins, Peggins Jr.com. This has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I tell you, my heart is overwhelmed. And I hope that people out there listening and watching will get something out of this. And you all can find this book on his book, Dear Son. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find everything on Amazon.com. Other places that they can find this book.
Yeah, so in addition to Amazon, you can find it on my website, dexterpegginsjr.com. I believe this week that the actual audio version of the book will be released as well. So you can find that on Amazon, as well as I believe the iTunes as well. So excited about that.
I'm excited about it too. Okay. Well, everybody, don't log off just yet. That's the end of our show. And I want to thank you all for joining me and my special guest, the one, the only Dexter Jr. You can watch this recorded episode on my YouTube channel entitled Life Matters with Michele TV Official. That is Life Matters with Michele TV Official. You can watch that on the YouTube channel. And we'll be right back here next week at 3 o'clock p.m. Every Sunday, 3 o'clock p.m., we will have another interesting topic about subjects and discussions that matter in our lives. So don't forget to tune in, and don't forget to watch the YouTube channel. And of course, we want you to like and share and then subscribe. If you want to be a guest on the show, of course, you can join me on the show, and you can just email me, contact me at www.mij.com. I don't even know my own website. Isn't that something? www.mij.com/contact us. Let's say it one more time. www.mij.com/contact us. We would love to have you on the show. We are already booked up until April of next year. We have 2 weeks in April available, and then we'll be moving on. So I would love to have you come on the show to discuss interesting topics that affect more importantly, the African American community. All right. So we would love to hear from you. We would love to have you on the show. And once again, I want to thank my friend, Mr. Dexter Peggins Jr., for joining us on today's show, discussing combating the fatherlessness crisis. It has been wonderful. I am your host, Michele Irby Johnson. And like I said, don't forget to chime in every Sunday at 3 o'clock right here on Facebook Live, and then watch the recorded episode on YouTube at Life Matters with Michele TV Official. Life Matters with Michele TV Official. Well, that's the end of our show, and we will see you next week.